This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for isms. But we're going to talk about the positive isms, even in a negative society. And as Charlie and I were talking about prior to coming on, there's a lot of negativity going on in our world, and there has been for a long time, but it's gotten worse in the last year or so, and especially with the new administration. Now, you may not agree with our political stance, and that is okay, because that's part of being an American. We can choose who we vote for, what we believe in. But one of the things that my guest does, which I think he does superbly, is that he doesn't sit back and wait for things to happen. He has a humanitarian heart, and he will reach out to everyone and anyone he knows to come on board with him. And Charlie Weiner, some people think of you only as a comedian or a musician,
right?
Or a writer, and a very good writer at that.
And actually, people like the books.
Actually, I think you do all three very well. And I feel blessed to have met you and many of your, I want to call them your gang, the John Moseys and the Alex Bevins and the Jim Ballards and Mossbrook and so many others. Okay. You are guys that you stand together for other human beings, and you don't really ask a lot of questions when it comes to it. For instance, with the fires in California, and as you and I just talked about, 3,000 miles away. Many of us in the beginning, when we heard about the fires, well, hey, fires happen in California every year. But this year it was so much different. And I think all of us have some sort of connection to what happened in California.
Well, I think number one, I think one of the things is that I have friends that are out there. I have, business acquaintances. I have all kinds of other things. So there is a personal, it's kind of the 6 degrees of separation from, Kevin Bacon. I mean, I think we're all a lot closer than 6 degrees. I think that we all are human. We're supposed to be humans on this planet. I would like to think that we're better than that, but the problem is that is watching the change that's come over this country over the very very quickly and in the last short period of time is that I used to talk about the fact that one of the things that I loved about my country the most was the fact that no matter where in the world a disaster happened, and it could happen in the middle of our worst enemy. I mean, like if there was an earthquake or tornadoes or, whatever kind of devastation, even if it was the country that we're almost at war with, the people in this country would stop, stand up, raise money, send food, send help, send everything else. We were the most giving, the most empathetic country, I think, in the world. And all of a sudden, we've turned into this nasty little child that's throwing temper tantrums all the time. And I think that that's the saddest commentary on this country that I've seen yet. And the thing that I live by now is I read this wonderful story a while back about a Dutch minister that emigrated to this country during the 1960s. And every night he would stand outside the White House with signs that said, give peace a chance and stop the war and all the rest of it. And he'd be out there all by himself, just with these signs, begging for, sanity. And one night a newspaper reporter came up to him and he goes, why are you doing this? He goes, do you really think one man can change a country? And the minister said, I don't do this to change the country. I do this so the country doesn't change me. And I think that was like one of the most profound things I've heard is that when we stand up for what we believe in, when we stand strong for other people's rights, when we stand strong, not just for us, but for other people, we retain what's most important in our souls.
It's interesting that you share that story because during the 2020 election, um, my youngest son was getting very nervous about which way it was going to go back then.
Mhm.
And he wrote a song that said, "This ain't America to me." And he kept talking about that he was going to publish it. Well, then Biden came into presidency and he said, "I've got to give him a chance. I have to see if my America is there." And right before the election, he went back to his uncle and he said, "Look, this song has to come out. It's not for me to be famous. It's not for me to make money, but it's for me to get my word out because
Right.
somebody else is going to understand it and maybe run with it and tell another person and another person." And he just finally made the decision with his uncle that how they're going to finally get this produced. And he said, "Mom, it has nothing to do with the fact that I wrote it, that I'm going to perform it." He said, "But we all have to talk about what's going on in this world."
Yeah.
And he's a 34-year-old young man who many young people today are hiding. They don't want to believe what's going on. They just want to live one day at a time. But you and I know that's not possible because if we
No.
don't live to help each other out, um, we're going to be in worse shape than we are now.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, it's just I grew up in my father just turned 100 last month,
God bless him.
and he keeps going. I mean, the thing is we had a birthday party for him. We had over 200 people at this birthday party. It was like a wedding. I mean, it was just huge, and he received all kinds of well-deserved proclamations and all these wonderful things from the city, from the county, from the state, from whoever, uh, because he volunteers to this day. He volunteers constantly. He volunteers at the Hospice of Western Reserve. He goes around to schools and gives speeches, and not just his war experience. Everybody always wants to hear about the World War II experience, but on how to live a better life and live with joy. Smile, say hello. Just make connections with other people. Don't just remain in your little with your phone. Your phone. Everybody's just walking around with this all the time. And
Yep.
how do you make a connection like that? You're blocking your connection. So I mean, I grew up that way. I said I was out with my mother's father, my grandfather on her side, and my father one day, and we were wandering around, and I was just a small kid at the time. And after a couple hours hanging out with these two chuckleheads, uh, we were driving back to home, and I asked them, I said, how do you guys know everybody? And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you know everybody. You talk to everybody. You seem like you know the people at the grocery store. You know the people at the hardware store. You know the people here." And they go, "We don't know those people." Well, we do now a little bit more. He said, "You just talk to people. You just make a connection." And I think that that's the most important thing is that you have to make the connection, and have empathy for other people's pain, have other empathy for other people's lives. Where most of us are very lucky that we live a pretty decent life.
Absolutely.
And you never know what's going on in other people's lives. So
And that's the most important message you just brought up. We don't know what somebody else is going through. And
right,
we have to stop making assumptions that just because somebody lives in this house or that house, drives a certain car or doesn't drive a certain
right,
car, you don't know them. Okay. And we also don't know what personally is going on inside of them. I know
right.
yesterday I was traveling with my husband and he looked over at me in the car and he said, "Is something wrong?" And I said, "Why do you ask that?" I was tired. I was sitting in the car for almost 8 hours. So I was just sort of oblivious. But he sensed in my demeanor. And
Right.
so we started a conversation about it. And I realized that there was something wrong. And I explained it to him. And what was wrong was I was so bored out of my mind that I
Now,
probably
no,
shouldn't have accepted going with him for the day. But we could laugh about it at the end, you know. And
mhm.
I think that's important wherever we are. You know, you're going through the grocery line, and if the clerk isn't friendly, you know, maybe the last person who came through was nasty to them. Maybe they got a phone call from home that's upsetting them. We don't know. So we have to communicate.
Always be a little more forgiving.
Absolutely. So, like, I know that you've done a lot of gatherings, raising money. You raised it for the hurricanes in North Carolina.
Right,
And again, that's not in our backyard, but you knew some people there because you performed in those areas.
right.
Um, you did it for the fires in California, and now you're going to be doing another one because the poor state of Kentucky is flooding.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've gotten decimated. I mean, it's just, it's another thing. I mean, and I know there's no such thing as climate change. So just we'll just assume God's mad at everybody. Maybe because
Yeah.
we don't burn gay people at the stake anymore. I don't know. But whatever it is. But I just think that and it's not me. I mean, I just people always give me way too much credit for a lot of this stuff, and I just think that I'm just very lucky to know a lot of people, and I know the hearts of the people that I deal with, and the fact that you just have to say, hey, I mean, it's to Mickey Rooney, I've got a barn, let's save the town kind of thing. That's what I grew up with, Frank Capra movies, and I just think that if you put the word out, I think all I do is put the word out, and people just jump. I mean, it's them, it's their talent, it's their songs, it's their presence, it's their whatever. They do all the work, and I try to just keep it moving. That's all my job is, and
Well,
I think they deserve all the credit, not me. That's for sure.
but in the community, we need those facilitators to bring us together. Okay.
Right.
So we can see the heart because sometimes we think there is no heart in our community. Um, I know I joined an online group and I was getting really frustrated with it because everybody wanted to be right, no matter what
Right.
the subject was, oh, the main road going through town needs to be paved. Okay, well, it was paved 2 years ago. All right, so we're probably not going to get it paved anytime too soon.
Right.
And I brought up, how can we make it work for us? Because when they go to pave it, our taxes are going to go up. So are you prepared? And the bombardment I was getting, why are you so negative? I said, no, I'm not. I'm saying, how can we work together? How can we make it happen? How can we live through the process? And I finally got off the group because I said, a lot of us are communicating online, we're hiding. And so we let our anger out at times
Mm.
when, you know what, maybe in person. And so now I'm thinking, there are town halls, there are places to go speak up.
Right.
These are the places to go.
I
What?
think sometimes it's also people feel very powerless in their own lives.
Yes.
And so then they get in a group like that, and it's like now I think it's a little sense of power, and they want to run with it and everything else. It's like I'm happy to be just a little cog in the machine. I mean, I just that's fine. I don't need to run anybody's lives. I'll speak my mind and go from there. But I just I don't put up with nastiness. I don't put up with if you want to come on my page and take a dump in my living room, you'll be gone. That's as simple as that. And I just I'm tired of the aggression and the nastiness and the just outright hate that you see that has been permitted in this country over the last 10 years or so.
Absolutely.
What
Well,
people refer to as political correctness, we used to call good manners.
Well, a
It's
little over a week ago, I had a mutual friend of ours on isms, Chuck Yarborough, and Chuck, very much like you, shares his thoughts, shares, I mean, not in a nasty, mean way. However, he's been attacked. He's been attacked
oh
brutally.
yeah.
And, you know, it's sad because, as far as I know, we still have freedom of speech. And when I tell people who come to my page, if you don't like what you're reading, please move on. You don't have to listen. You don't have to read it because I don't read the things that incite me. But I do look for the information that I need to make my
I
thoughts.
thought it was funny the other day. I put up something that some guy came. I don't even know this guy or whatever, and he called me a communist every other line, just about me being a communist to being a whatever else. And I finally had enough, and I just said, here's what I want you to do because you obviously don't understand the word. I'd like you to go look up the word communist, okay, and then look up the term self-employed. I said I've been self-employed my entire adult life. It's really hard to be a communist when you're self-employed. I
Yeah.
mean, that very definition of capitalism is to be self-employed. I mean, you're out running. You're if you don't work, you don't make any money. If you don't do whatever, if you don't go hustle, you don't work. And I mean, it's just that's the very definition of capitalism, right at the basis level, and I'm tired of stupid. I don't put up with stupid anymore. I mean, that's where I draw the line. People they act like they know something and they really have no clue. I one guy going on about I was a socialist or whatever, and the funny thing is that the person that was going on about that was a former firefighter who was in a union, and yet, and I said, I hate to tell you, you're a socialist because that's what a socialist is. We all throw our money in and hire the fire department. I said the fire department, that's a socialist organization. The police are a socialist organization. The U.S. military is a socialist organization. We all throw money in our taxes, and we hopefully get the benefit of what these people provide. That's socialism. To tell them, you like the military? Yeah, okay, well, you're a socialist. I can't help you. So am I. I like the military. We need them. Well, not the one that we're getting now, but
Well, and I think you're right. I think the problem is that so many of us, number one, don't understand our history. And I am so
right.
thankful to my youngest son because he loves history. And every once in a while, he'll say to me, Mom, you got to go read this article. And it's backed up by these articles. And I'll go, all right. And he goes, I just want you to understand the background. And sometimes I look at him and go, but I didn't learn that in school. He said, yeah, you learned what was in the textbook, period. He said,
Right.
when I went to school, I questioned everything that was in the textbook, and
Good
he
for him.
still does. And I'll tell you, he just makes me feel like a smarter person every day because I have to check my facts.
Well, and again, I think that that's a problem with what they're talking about. Like Ohio just passed this stupid law, or I think they passed it or getting close to passing it. But what they want to do with the colleges, now everybody has to take an American history course. Okay, now whose American history are you going to teach? Are you going to teach about the Sand Creek Massacre? You're going to talk about the Trail of Tears? You're going to talk about slavery? You're going to talk about this? No, we're just going to whitewash it like when I was growing up. Back in the 1800s, there wasn't that much history at that point. But I mean, it was a whitewashed version of history. They didn't teach about all the Wounded Knee and Sand Creek and Trail of Tears, and they didn't teach you about how horrible slavery was, and the thing that the slaves built all these. I mean, basically built the White House and built the Congress and built. I mean, it's all slave labor. I mean, they don't tell you things like that, and I just think and people go, well, why do you hate your country? I don't. I love my country, but I also love my country, knowing all of her warts and boils and what she has overcome to get to where we're at and how far we have to go. I mean, just because you love something doesn't mean that you don't see what that person truly is, or the good and the bad. I mean, it's just as simple as that. That's not love, that's worship. I don't worship anything except
Well,
for my wife.
it's interesting because during the last election, something came up about women's rights and specifically women's rights to have their own credit card in their own name. Now, I grew up in the 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Never realized my mother's credit card was always in my father's name.
Right.
And I read the information. It was the early 70s when I was a young bride that I could get my own credit card.
You get your own credit card. Yeah. I mean,
And
people talk it like it's
I
ancient
can,
history.
yeah,
It's like it's our lifetime.
yeah.
It's
And
not.
I think back, and it's like, but I thought, we had all these rights and everything was so wonderful. And now that I look back at that history, I realize, yes, we've come a long way, but we're starting to chip into it and say, oh, those
Right.
things aren't necessary anymore.
We're
As a
backsliding.
woman, you don't need it anymore. And it's like,
Right.
but women are providing for this country.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we need what everybody else has, what men have? You know,
It's
and
called
I
equal.
also
It's called
understand
equal rights. You're supposed to be equal. Nobody's asking for more rights. See, that's the thing that you get into when people go, "Oh, why do gay people or trans people or have to have all these extra rights?" So they don't want extra rights. They
you should
want
have
the
the
same
same
rights that
right.
I have
Yeah,
as a white heterosexual male in this country. And I just, for them not to have that, that's what's wrong. Not for them to have that. That's what's right. It's just
exactly.
insane. Everybody's
So,
afraid of losing their like a little berry out of the pie, and they're, well, that's my berry. I go, no, it could have been in the other guy's piece of pie. You don't know that.
so a little over a year ago, you gave up your traveling as a comedian. You decided to, you know, stay home, right?
Yeah.
Be close to home. Do you miss the comedy? Because the comedy, I would think at times allowed you to escape from a lot of the
I mean, I loved all of it. I said, the ups and the downs and the, sleeping in the car and whatever else. I mean, everything about the job I loved. I mean, except for being away from my wife and my family. It's funny that I am just really at my core a homebody, but yet I was on the road for 45 years, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. I also knew that I was getting older. When I hit 70, I was like, no, I think, I performed for 57 years. That's a good career. And I got to do things that I never really thought I would get to do. And then I had to stop and go, why am I still performing? Am I still performing because I feel like I'm getting better? A little bit. But am I performing to assuage my own ego? And I think that's what it kind of came down to, is that I was performing for me, um, just because that's what I always did. And I basically was standing in the way of younger comics and younger musicians having a chance to have their chance to do what I did.
right.
Because I mean, it's not like I was going to get any higher on the totem, as far as fame or whatever else. And I really never wanted to be famous. And that was I was very lucky that, like, in the late 70s and early 80s, I had just enough of fame and or renown or whatever that I knew that wasn't me. I have no desire for that. I mean, I just, it takes away your privacy. It takes away everything, that you want to do, and then you become a slave to the fame rather than a slave to the work. And I just wanted to do my job. That's all I really cared about. And I don't miss it. I've said to my wife several times when we were discussing me retiring and getting off the road, she was like, "Oh, so you're going to be here all the time?" I don't think she was saying it in quite the same positive way that I saw it. I mean, she really, she ran this place. I mean, this was hers. And now I've barged in, and there's a little headbutting going on here or there. that over the last couple of years. But it's just I knew if I stayed on the road, I'd die. I mean, I just it's just she'd always go, well, you don't have to push as hard as you do. I go, I don't know, I don't know how to do it any other way. So I don't miss it. I really love sitting here with my dogs. My wife goes to work in the evening because she's a bartender, and then the dogs and I sit around, and I got one of them that usually lays next to me while I sit here and I type and I write. I write my new books, and I have a new book that I'm hip deep in right now, and I'm enjoying it. And I write about people that I like for the most part. So,
Well, you wrote a book about your dog too.
oh, I love my dogs.
Yes.
Can't be without my dogs.
So I remember when you wrote the book about your dogs, you were going to libraries and schools and reading to children. Do you still do that?
We're working on that again. We just between COVID and everything, we kind of got lost along the way, and so we have the one book that I wrote. It's a children's book called Lost Dog Found, and it's the story of our dog Greta, who is a bearded collie, and I was explaining to the kids that I said it's not my book, it's Greta's book. These are the stories that she tells me when we go for walks, and because that's what we would do is we would talk, and she'd tell me what life was like before she got to us, because we got her when she was 13 months old. She lived in the forests of Kentucky for however long and had a litter of pups and all the rest of this stuff. And these are the stories that she told me. And I always loved kids they go, she talks to you? And I go, yeah, you want to talk to your dog? I said, talk to my dog. These are the stories that she tells me. And so, the whole idea is, it was actually my wife's idea to write a book about Greta. And then Greta is a therapy dog, so she can go into schools or hospitals and stuff. We got to get back into doing that. And then so we would talk about the book and talk about her. And the idea was that we would just print up a ton of books. And then if the kids wanted the books, they got them for free. That was just, and that would be their book. And nobody could take it from them. If they want to color in it, if they want to write their name in it, if they want to bend the pages, it's their book. Nobody can take it, because a lot of these kids have nothing, and then that was their possession. And that was the whole idea behind it. And that was, it worked. I mean, we went out to, like libraries and stuff, and, I got to get back into it. So now that I'm home.
Well, in your writing, one other thing I want to touch on, you've been blessed enough to be able to do some traveling out of the country, and you've gone to many wonderful places. But one of the things I noticed when you and your wife travel, you're not necessarily at the touristy places. You are amongst the people.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to go there, it's not Disneyland. I mean, that's always kind of the problem. The problem with most Americans is they go places and they expect it to be Disneyland. And people go, well, why do you bother to learn the languages? I mean, I've learned, I learned a bunch of Czech, German, Spanish, whatever, wherever we're going. I always want to at least, know some things, and then learn more as you go, because you're there, you're a guest in their country.
Right.
And everybody speaks English. I go, I don't care if they speak English or not. They didn't come to my country. I'm going to theirs. And I think that I want to be, you can watch someone's attitude completely do a 180 when you start communicating with them in their language. Even if I said my favorite thing, we were in Oslo, and I was trying to say something to a guy in Norwegian. And the guy just stopped me, and he goes, I appreciate what you're trying to do. He goes, but you're butchering my language. My English is much better than your Norwegian. He goes, I appreciate it. Just don't do it. But I mean, that's the thing, is that wherever you go, I want, we've got a trip coming up, and I'm trying to learn a few different languages for that. Just a dozen, 15, 20 things that you could say in whatever language. And because then they welcome you in. Then they, now all of a sudden they say, oh, well, you don't, well, come with us. We're going to go do whatever, and it's a bunch. We run into some of the most amazing things. You just happen to fall off. It's like you fall over them or whatever, because we're not part of a tour. We're just the two of us wandering, getting lost. We're very good at getting lost, and then we have to. The beauty of it is, the funny thing is, like, you could be in some of these countries and you're lost, you have no idea where you are, and you ask somebody, how do I get to wherever, and they will stop what they're doing and they will walk you to where you need to go. And I'm like, you just point. They're like, no, this is, I'll get back to this, and they, they'll walk you somewhere. I just think it's marvelous. That's humanity at its best, I think.
It absolutely is. And I think it says a lot about you and your wife, making the effort to be part of their country rather than making them be part of your
Right.
adventure.
Well, I mean, whatever. My wife gets mad when I talk like this because it sounds like we're bragging or something, but it's an example of what it was like. We were in a certain country or whatever, and I saw this mango ice cream bar. I go, well, I'm gonna get that later on today as soon as we're done wandering around or whatever else. And we come back to get the mango ice cream bar, and I just told the woman that she goes, well, why don't you sit down at the table? I go, because I just want that little mango ice cream bar. I can walk with that or whatever. She goes, just sit down at the table. We don't want to take up a table for an ice cream bar. And she goes, no, just sit at the table. So we're sitting at the table. My wife looks up, and they had her favorite champagne there, and it's our anniversary. So we said, we'll have a glass of champagne. We sat there for 3 hours, just watching life go by. And we looked around, and other people were just sitting there, and nobody's in a hurry for you to get off the table. You know why? Because they don't live off of tips. They they all get paid a halfway decent wage. And I said, that's submerged their culture. That's more their culture, not the hurry, go, 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 go thing. Their culture was like, sit down, have a cup of coffee, have a glass of champagne, whatever. Just and we sat there for 3 hours and just talked and just watched life go by, and it was wonderful. I mean, it was a really eye-opening experience as far as learning how to submerge yourself into somebody else's culture. It's fantastic.
I love it. Well, I'm so glad we've had this time together, as Carol Burnett would say. So tell us, when are you doing this next shindig for the floods in Kentucky?
The floods in Kentucky is March 12th at the Beachland Ballroom. I will be cementing everything in place again today to make sure we have the lineup that we really want, and it's going to be the beauty is that Northeast Ohio, and I say this, number one, because I'm a homeboy, but number two, because I've traveled around the country my whole life. I think Northeast Ohio has possibly, well, I'll just go top three of talent and quality of writers and musicians and everything in the country. And so, I could just close my eyes and point, and I could put together the best show you'll ever see. I mean, every time people come to one of these shows, they're always like, "Oh my God, that was fantastic!" I go, tell them that, they're the ones who put this thing on, and it's just, so it'll be a great show, and it'll raise money for to help people that are in need. What more do you want?
And you have a great venue that is working with you.
Beachland, yeah, Cindy's the best. I mean, older. When I saw this stuff about Kentucky, I sent her a note and said, "Feel free to say no because I abuse you." And she's like, "Oh well, I would love doing the shows and whatever else." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I just I don't want you're allowed to say no at some point, and I'll go beat somebody else up about it." So.
Well, I'll just be coming.
It's gonna be it'll be a real fun night. And
I'll just be coming home from
early. We'll be done early. People just go, "No, it's a Wednesday night." I go, "Well, you'll be home by 10:30 So don't worry about it."
I love it. Well, I'll be coming home from Kentucky on that day. I'm going, but I'm not going to be in the flood area. I'm going to be in Louisville. Although my son's apartment is right on the Ohio River,
Did he get
And
flooded? Because the Ohio River was
yeah,
cresting down there.
there was flooding, but not excessive where he is.
Right. Okay.
But his office was closed because of the little bit of flooding that they had in his area. And he called me and he goes, Mom, I can go out the garage on the other side and avoid the flood. And I said, well, hey, enjoy the day off because you're going to be real busy as soon as baseball season starts. But I'm so grateful for everything you do, Charlie. Um, I'm going
Just
to
living.
I'm going to have Charlie's information in the show notes so that you can go out and get every one of his books. I
Good.
think that would be a great idea. And if you want to invite Charlie and Greta to come, speak to your group, let him know because Greta is one beautiful dog. One beautiful
She
dog.
is fantastic. She is the best dog of all time.
Well, set by a very charming father. Thank you again. I appreciate you and good luck at Beachland Ballroom.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Let's see you. Thanks.
Bye.